video, we're starting out the first 12 bars of the solo. And as we mentioned briefly in the intro, I'll be playing the Stratocaster. Now, Eric is, of course, now a Stratocaster icon, but was not always so. And I love the sound he was getting with the John Mayall's Blues Breakers and All Through Cream, where he's playing all kinds of great Gibsons. And in the 60s, with Cream, it had that really warm, as they referred to it as woman tone. And by the time I mean, growing up when I did, I mean, my first association with Eric was with him playing the Stratocaster. But I definitely then went back. So I'll be showing you, I mean, all of this solo that happens. Some of it's pulled from things I learned from the Strat years. Some of it's pulled from things from earlier on where he was, you know, phrasing things maybe a little differently, or things he was doing back with Cream, or as a lot of folks, for whatever reason, call it the Cream. But you're going to stick with Form 4 from the Blues Forms lesson, and the track will repeat for you to play along with on the back side. So there's another pickup note, just as in with the Style of B.B. King lesson, the same idea. I'm starting here. The pickup here is 5 on the 3rd string, 6 on the 3rd string, then 5 on the 2nd string, 7 on the 2nd string, leading up to 5 on the high E string. So it's targeting the A note. Okay, I'm going to turn on some overdrive here. So can't get the exact same sound I got when I did the jam along. I cranked, and I think I bridged like the channels on a Tweed Fender, and so got all the overdrive off the amp, and and elsewhere in the recording chain, just driving, you know, preamps hard. Sometimes if it's a good, like, you know, transformer based mic pre, that can help. So we're going to get into it like that, and then we go from the 8th fret on the 2nd string, slide it up to the 10th fret, and vibrato. Well, remember we talked about that same approach in the Styles of B.B. King lesson, and I'd mentioned that you could also hear that in Clapton's. And it's something that a lot of great players have done things like that through the decades. And it's something that forms it's part of certain iconic guitar player styles, but it's also just something that's part of a lot of great guitar players that you can't pin on any one particular player. So we'll get into it just like that, and it's then going to finish out measure 1 at the 8th fret high E string with a quarter step bend. And as we get into this, also have in the back of your mind, even though we're not talking about Freddie King licks, and this solo is quite different than what I played on the Styles of Freddie King lesson. Clapton's guy, of course, he was dear friends with B.B. and went on to play and record with B.B. And yeah, I mean, Clapton was influenced really by all 3 Kings, B.B., Freddie, and Albert. But Freddie King was really Clapton's guy. And you hear a lot of Freddie King in Eric's playing. And so keep that in mind. And always, if there's a player that you really admire, that you love the way they play, find out who their inspirations were and then go check that out. You know, we could sort of loosely just say, if you wanted to look at the major icons of the rock era and their great influences, like Clapton's was Freddie King. Mike Bloomfield, the great guitar player, played in the Paul Butterfield Blues Band, then in the Electric Flag, did a lot of work with Al Cooper, played with Bob Dylan. Mike Bloomfield's guy was B.B. King, and Stevie Ray Vaughan's guy was Albert King. Sometimes I'll make those generalizations just to point folks in the right direction. If you're looking for players of the rock era, and sort of who did these 3 kings, who were their adopted kids, their children, so to speak, all 3 of those guys, there's a direct link. And they all liked all 3 kings, but if you're looking for like the closest connection, that would be the A to B connection that I would say. So Eric goes to Freddie. And so I'm starting out. I was supposed to say he starts out, but you know, I put the solo together. But it's a phrase like that. And then measure 2 is back to 5th fret 2nd string. And then first fret, 8, quarter step bend, 5. After that, back to 5, second string. So it's triplets. And you do it again. And then you go 7, slide up through 8 into 9. Then to 8 on the second string, 9 on the third string, slide back to 7. Then measure 3, 5 on the third string, half step bend. And Eric will do these things with the time. I mean, the rhythm, the time, the groove when he's soloing. And I tried to, I had to shape all of these, give them some kind of cohesive theme. And in certain cases, like, as a young kid, Eric being my first guitar hero, although I probably play more like a few other of my inspirations than Eric, naturally, left to my own devices. But that stuff that impacts you as a kid, I think, always stays with you. And so I couldn't possibly put everything that I would have learned about Eric Clapton's guitar style into like a single solo for you. But the thing that I tended to emphasize here, putting this one, is rhythmically and groove-wise, he'll do these great kind of phrases. Clapton is, I was going to say but he's really one of the kings of phrasing. His phrasing is great. He'll do things when he's phrasing, and we got a lesson earlier in the course on just the subject of phrasing. You might check that out if you haven't seen that yet and you want to know more. But Eric's phrasing is remarkable, and he'll do things with the time where he kind of almost goes into like a double time kind of thing. And it's already a shuffle. But I'm not trying to play fast like wowing anybody with, it's not with Clapton, it's not about unbelievable chops and I'm going to play something very technical and impressive, taking nothing away from those kinds of players. It's a totally different style of music, but like if you listen to like Joe Satriani and Steve Vai and those guys, but typically those players, they're not really blues-based in the same way, at least. It's a different bag. With the Clapton thing, it's like as much technique as you need to play the music and get the expression out and then stop. It's like there's no point in needless, there's no point in technique to do these wild things all over the fingerboard at warp speed. It's just, how much do I need to make this phrase happen? So I feel like I'm double timing there, and I'm going, I'm starting with just triplets. Even the backside of measure 2 doubles up. It's like the rhythm, and you can make sense of that theoretically, but I don't know that it'll help, and I don't want to lead anybody in the wrong direction there. Yeah, we can say it's a 32nd note triplet followed by 3 16th notes. Yes, that's true, but you got to feel it. You can know it. You can know everything up in your head and on the paper, and not have it in your hands when you play. And you want it in your hands when you play. And you develop good time by playing with really good players, practicing with really great records. As boring as it is, you can sit around and practice with a metronome. I, in full disclosure, did not really learn blues guitar that way. I practiced other things to a metronome. Like if I was working on like really complicated stuff, like in the Jerry Reed guitar course, where it's like showing you Jerry's breakdown. Stuff like that, I'd practice to a metronome. Blues stuff, I'd just go for records, and then I'd try to play with as often as I could, going to jams and open mics, and then eventually, like, hopefully you get better, you start to get to play with better players. But I'm doubling it up on the backside, and that's leading into measure 13, and I'm really digging into the string there. In the right-hand techniques lesson, I talk a bit about right-hand touch and how sometimes Eric will really dig into a string. So beat 1 of measure 3, I'm doing that. That's an upstroke. And then I'm going 7th fret, 3rd string, bend it up, and I'm doing a pre-bend. So I'm going, and then back to unbend, and then 5, 7, then 7 on the 4th string. Eric will do these things where he's playing these great phrases, but he's also got the same fret. It's an interval of 4th between the 3rd and the 4th string, is what I'm trying to say. He'll get that going on often. So not like I just played, but in the case of a real life musical context, a lick. You know, to that thing where it's a little bit of string skipping, but just the strings are side by side. So the lick is going to be pre-bend, bend, then unbend, then 5, 7, then 7 on the next string on the 4th string, back to 5 and 7 on the 3rd strings, and then we pre-bend again on beat 1 of measure 4, full step pre-bend, and then 5 on the 2nd string, 8, 2nd string, and then 5, 8, 5, hammer on pull-off. Eric loves to do that. And so there are people in the world who don't love Eric Clapton. Other guitar players, he was a colossal influence on me. But Eric loves to do that lick so much. It can become a cliche, although I don't feel the cliche when he plays it. One of my high school friends who also came up playing guitar did not love Eric nearly as much as I did, and it became a running joke, you know. But to me, Eric is undisputed one of the greatest guitar players, lead guitar players of all time. I think he wrote the book on lead guitar in the rock era. I mean, who else was really doing it for Clapton? I don't, you know, I'll cease making my case over the brilliance of Eric Clapton right now and continue on with the lesson. But, you know, he was the guy who synthesized the Three Kings and infused rock music with a blues approach to lead guitar. And after Eric Clapton, I mean, the whole game changes. You got to remember, when Hendrix was taken over to England, he asked Chas Chandler, well, okay, yeah, but, you know, if I can meet Eric Clapton, it's like Eric influenced everybody. Who else was doing this before Eric in a rock context? So we wind up in measure 4. Play that lick that I just told you a story about my high school friend and I having the running joke about. Then, yeah, you can turn that into a running joke, but how many people really sound like Eric Clapton when they play? The answer is Eric Clapton. So follow that. Then 7 on the 3rd string. Back to 5 on the 2nd string, back to 7 on the 3rd string. It's just 16th notes crammed in the space of one beat, and it's his phrasing. And then we take a slight break. I can't even count this. I can put it on the page and make sense of it when I'm mathematically transcribing it for you, but I'm feeling it all the way. Then a pre-bend at the 7th fret again, and you release and pull off. Pull off to the 6th, pull off to the 5th fret, then to 7 on the 4th string, then 5 on the 3rd, 7, 5 on the 2nd, back to 5 on the 3rd. So the backside of measure 4 is, and you got to rely on good alternate picking techniques in the right hand. And then measure 1, beat 5 is 7 on the 4th string. Then 5 and 5 together on the 3rd string. 1, 2, and 3, 4. So you put measures 3 and 4 together, you get. And I've got to get that in context from the beginning. I'll give you measures 1 through 5. That's what you get. So there's a lot of feeling of like I'm doubling things up in there, and then I'm slowing back into the main groove. 1, 2, and 3, 4. That's right in. I don't feel like I'm doubling anything there when I'm winding up on measure 5 on the start. So it's followed by that, then back to 7 on the 4th string, 5 on the 3rd string, and then 7 on the 3rd string, and you do a half step. And then back to 7, pull off to 5. Then 7 on the 4th string. That brings you up to measure 6. Slide into the 9th fret on the 3rd string. Slide up from the 7th. Then 8, 2nd string. Then 9, slide back to 7. Then 5 on the 3rd string. Then 7 on the 4th string. 5 on the third string, 7, 5, second string, 5, third string, 8, second string, 5, second string, 7, third string, 5, third string, half step, bend it up into the major third. So the licks sound like. There's some mode mixture going on there too. The chords on the track are D7. And if you look, I'm playing a lot of A minor pentatonic. It's all out of that shape. And then I'm winding up into the major third. Beat 1 in measure 7. When the chords go back to A7, I'm bringing out that major sound. So, and then we wind up taking a little bit of a breather, and then we slide into the 7th fret on the 5th string, and then go skip a string to the 7th fret on the 3rd string, back to 10th fret, 4th string, back to 7th fret, vibrato it. And I can't give you the exact reference, but I know I've heard him do that. You know, maybe like on the 24 Nights, it was a double album. We're talking like back to like early 90s, from the Royal Albert Hall. That was an early record along with Journeyman. I could give you like the exact Eric Clapton records to go listen to if you want to like go deep into Eric, both from the solo years and then the earlier stuff with Cream and Blind Faith. But I probably picked that up listening to 24 Nights. It was like in my consciousness. By the time I was like 10 or 11 years old, I was sitting around with that record. Then we wind up going into a Cream lick, basically. I mean, a lick Eric would have played in Cream. Measure 8, it would go 8, measure 8, start at the 8th fret, 2nd string, slide into the 10th fret, big vibrato, then back to 8, then 3rd string, 9, you slide down to 7, then 5, and then here we go, 7, slide up to 9, and then on the 2nd string and the 1st string, we both go through the 8th fret, one after the other, so it's a triplet. Into measure 9, 10, vibrato, and then we go 8, half step bend on the high E. And that lick comes out of the Cream record. It's on the album Disraeli Gears. There's a track on there, Strange Brew. Disraeli Gears, as I seem to recall from Eric's memoir, was recorded in America. But if you listen to Strange Brew, it's a great track. So Eric was still playing the Gibsons through the Marshalls then, of course. I'd love to talk about the history of his gear all day long, but we'll keep this focused here. I don't think he was playing the Les Paul, though, by Disraeli Gears. He had the Les Paul that he'd play with John Mayall was stolen during the rehearsals for the first Cream tour, as I seem to recall. So measure 9 starts like that. And that's the lick. We've gone through it mechanically, but when you make music out of it, it's just starting in measure 7, going through. And I was so obsessed with Eric Clapton. I had some book of like all the sessions he played on, like not his own kind of stuff at all. Like if he was like somewhere on a George Harrison record or somewhere on, because he did quite a bit of session work. That's Eric on playing the guitar parts on Well, My Guitar Gently Weeps on the White Album on the Beatles record. I mean, that's a very obvious reference. Probably a lot of people are familiar with that, but he's done all kinds of other stuff, session work. Good appearances to be found if you're digging deep into Eric. So measure 9 finishes out with slide into the 14th fret, 3rd string, and then 13th fret, 2nd string up to 15. And it's another half step bend, then back to 15, then 13, back to 14 on the 3rd string, and then 13, 2nd string, 15 again, and we go full step pre-bend, back to 15, 13, 14 3rd, 15 2nd, 14 3rd, 13 2nd, 15, 13 half step bend, 14 now, third, 13 half step. That's a lot of notes fast, but when you put it together, again, I'm doubling things. I'm feeling like I'm double timing, even though I guess I'm not. It's just 16th notes, but it's all where it falls in the pocket and on what part of the beat, and it's developing good time. You can break it down, like I say, and try to make theoretical sense out of it, and you will if you really learn your musical theory. But I don't know. I mean, with that kind of stuff, I'll tell you, if there's, and I want to give you a fast track, but it's just the honest truth, is the way that I learned to do stuff like that is by copying the licks and learning all I could, and then trying to play along with the records. And I spent a lot of time when I was learning guitar, and I also recorded myself a lot so I could hear the arc of my progress. And I've still got the tapes. They range from really comically bad when I'm trying to play things no 11-year-old or 10-year-old should ever try to play on the guitar, just massacring things. I was terrible the first 2 or 3 years I played guitar, just horrible. Out of tune, no groove. But there's something to be said for natural talent, but there's also a lot to be said for really wanting something more than anything else in the world. And I wanted to get good at guitar, and I wouldn't stop. I wouldn't take no for an answer. So I learned that stuff by just practicing and failing and staying at it no matter what. And something happened 3 or 4 years in. I started to get better. And then I started to get better and better and better. So you learn that by just not giving up. And so I'm not going to tell you to learn this by, you need to go and learn exactly a 8th note triplet followed by with a 16th note somewhere in the last part of that triplet. If you see it on the page, yeah, mathematically it'll add up to that, but you got to internalize this feel by listening to the main guys, playing with good players, and if you don't have access to great players, I mean, certainly like when I was a kid, there was no chance of playing with anybody as good as who are like the guys that play with Clapton through the years, like Steve Gadd and like Willie Weeks, great bass player, Nathan East. I was never going to play with anybody that good when I was growing up trying to learn this stuff. But you got the records. Work with the records, So the phrase, when you put it together, measure 9 going into 10. You wind up ending there at the 14th fret. That's in measure 11. And you got to finish this phrase out. Last bend, it'll measure 11, is 8th fret, high E string, full step bend. And then 8 half step, now measure 12, and it's back to triplets. So I'm not feeling like I'm doubling anything. I'm just playing in time at the shuffled groove. I'm playing triplets. So I'm going half step bend, 5 now, 5 second string, 7 third string, 5 twice, and then with a vibrato, and then 7 third string, 5 second string, 5 third, 7 third, 5 second, 5 high E string to 10 B. So it's that motion again. And that brings you across the double bar line where the band stops begin, and I'm playing stuff over that. So the whole first 12 bars, and I'm going to try to do this slowly enough for you to feel a sense of a groove and to have it somewhat fall in the pocket. But if I was counting it slowly, I'd be like 1, 2, 3, and I think that's all the notes. But that's certainly the idea of it, and where things are doubling up versus falling like right on just triplets against the shuffle. And, you know, they call Clapton Slow Hand. That's his nickname. I mean, he will play things from time to time. Listen to the stuff in Cream. He'd play these amazing solos, and sometimes there was some technicality, and he was playing relatively fast. I played a lot of stuff there that goes by pretty quickly. I play some phrases that they're pretty fast, but it's not the same approach to speed as, like, you know, I mentioned earlier, like a really technically based rock guitar approach or something. It's not that, and he is slow hand. Like he'll play something that goes by in a moment, and then stand back and breathe and collect himself, and then play another really good phrase. Or sometimes he'll just play one note, and it's the perfect note. So slow hand, keep that in mind. You know, it's you develop technique as a means to an end, but it's just a means to an end. It's like you're focusing on expression and trying to communicate something when you're playing. You know, it's past just the technical, and I don't mean any music is ever just about the technical. I don't want to. That would be a little insulting to other forms of art, but it's really true with blues. It's like, okay, if you don't need the technique, don't go after it. You know, just get what you need to express what you need to express. So sometimes you need a little more, sometimes you need a little less. Albert King never played certain things Clapton would have played, but I'll tell you, Clapton still wants to play like Albert King. So it's all about expression, it's all about heart, it's all about feeling, it's all about honesty, communicating that in your playing. So having said that now, I'm going to sync up to the click. This is at the jam track tempo. And we're going to play because that phrase goes across the bar line, end of measure 12 into measure 13. We're going to end on the 8th note, the first beat of measure 13. Here we are to the click. 1, 2, 3. In this video, we'll take a look at, continuing on with the solo, what happens from measure 13 through measure 28. And as with the B.B. King lesson, we're structuring these sections of the video. This is just what happens as I'm playing the lead over the band stops, and then where the band picks back up and finishes out the round of the blues. So it's going to be measures 13 through 28. So we got into that at the end of the first solo lesson. We ended here. And then we have to resolve it back to the 8th fret, 2nd string. And I slide down, although that's really someone I would have gotten from Albert King over Eric, but we all love Albert King. So, and then it's going to wind up back at the 5th fret, 2nd string. And then 7th fret, 3rd string, then pre-bend up to the full step, back to unbend. So it's triplet, but it's instead of that, it gives you a different sound. And then 5, quarter step, 7, 4th string, slide down. So what immediately, as soon as it goes to the breaks, I'm not really doing the double thing anymore. I'm playing more just kind of laid back, like over the regular kind of groove. And then I'm going 5 and 5. Eric will do great double stops. We got a lesson earlier in this course on double stops and triples and full chords and chord soloing. But Eric will do things, I think I must have heard that on 24 Nights too, also where he'll like slide up through fifths or fourths, however you want to think about that. But it's the 5th fret on the 5th and 4th strings, and you slide into the 7th fret on the 5th and 4th strings. And if you put vibrato on that, there's a lot of power. It's the sound of a power chord. So you can do that. Then back to 5 on the 4th string, 7, 5th string, 5, 4th string, and then 7, slide back through 5, pull up to 3, and that's on the 5th string. Now 6th string, 5, and then 5 on the 5th string, 5, 6th string, 3 5th string. Remember in the first solo where I said we'll use force like that, and you'll hear that when Clapton plays? Well, here it's down the octave. And then measure 16, I'm just hammering onto the 5th fret, 5th string. And I'm doing it 3 times. And then bending the half step at the 3rd fret, 5th string. And then sliding into the 7th fret, going through to the 4th string. So this is, some of this now, it's a theme that we're seeing. And again, these were not their exact solos, any of these styles lessons, but these are things that I got big time from my heroes. And so here's, along with rhythmically and some of the other stuff we've been talking about through this, it's another 4th. So whether it's here, or here, or here, that to me is a characteristic of when Eric will play. So, and so we'll slide into that. In fact, you can slide with your 3rd finger because, and you let it ring, because then I'm going to go beat 1, measure 17, 5th fret here on the 3rd string, back to 7th fret, twice with some vibrato, then half step bend at the 5th fret, 3rd string, then slide into the 7th fret, 4th string, back to 5th fret, 3rd string, and then full step at the 7th, 3rd string, 7th, 5 hammer onto 7, do it again, 5 vibrato. So that's through measure 18, and there's 2 more notes left, but it forms one phrase I want to talk about in one swift move. So right now, up through that point, we have, so up to that point from the double bar line, it's okay, and that leads you up here to this phrase that I got off of Have You Ever Loved a Woman, the solo he plays on it on Layla and other sort of love songs, Derek and the Dominoes. Eric will do things like this where it is raking, technically, and if you've been through all kinds of other styles of guitar play, I mean, folks talk about it like really fast rock players. Number 1, I can't do that. Number 2, I don't think like that. Maybe I don't do it because I can't do it. Maybe I can't do it because I don't like it, or I don't like it because I don't know. I like some of that stuff. Just depends on who. I mean, Eric Johnson is amazing. He's a great guitar player. He's always very melodic. That's the thing about EJ. But in this case, we're going to keep it much simpler. It's not like a super fast, like, you know, phrase off of a Van Halen's a separate study, I guess, unto himself. I never got into that stuff. But all I mean by sweeping here is you're dragging the pick down and then hammering on and pulling off with the string. So you're getting a rapid succession of notes, but it's all split between the left and the right hand. And it's not like I'm articulating every note with this blinding alternate picking technique. I don't have that. But I figured out early on I had to make up for it in the left hand, and it was great for what I wanted to learn was a lot of blues and blues-based rock. So I had what I needed. If I had been as into other stuff as I was into that, I'm sure I would have stuck with it, and I would have caught on to it sooner or later somehow. But naturally, I don't have a lot of speed in my right hand. So it's all from the combination of the right and the left working together. And so that's leading in 7 to 5 on the 4th and 3rd strings at the end of measure 18. And then 7 bending up a full. And this beginning kind of the downward raking. Is it raking or sweeping? I don't know. But it's one of those. 5 on the 2nd string, immediately through to high E string. So if you look at the sheet music, it's 16th notes. But I'm not trying to articulate them other than just getting the pick to be in the right place at the right time on the strings side by side. Like that. And then the index is still, well, it's here at the 5th fret, and my pinky is hammering on at the 8th and pulling back off. Remember I talked in the first 12 bars about that lick that I had that running joke with my friend that was not nuts about Eric Clapton the way I was as a kid? Well, it's the same thing. It's that hammer-on pull-off thing, but it's in between kind of this raking phrase. And Eric does something exactly like that on the solo. I learned all of his solos on that particular track off that record. But check it out, Derek and the Dominoes, Layla, and other sort of love songs. But it was from the solo on somewhere on Have You Ever Loved a Woman. The intro is great too. He plays a great intro solo, and then he plays some great solos in the middle. You know, and then there's Duane Allman's stuff. That's a whole other deal. Because Duane was on that record with him. So that's what's happening. And then back to 7, half-step bend. Back to 7, pull off the 5. 7 now, back to 7 on the 4th string. That's happening again. And then 5, 7, 3rd string, 7, 4th string. So there we go again. Then back to 5, 3rd string. So the whole measure is. And then measure 20 is, get there cleanly. My strings are getting a little corroded here. At this point, I'm sweating. So 8, slide into 10. Then 8, vibrato both. And then 9, slide back to 7. And 5 on the 3rd string. 7, slide into 9. 8, followed by 8 again. It's the strange Brulick again. So then that's where the band picks back up into time and the chords go to D, 7. And I'm just playing minor pentatonic licks over there. Sometimes it's listed as a major there on the page, like I bend a half step. So I'll get you into time there. Maybe I actually played a major. Maybe I played that over D7. Did I? I don't think I would have. I don't know. You know, whatever is going to sound good in the moment. That's what I'll go for. But just the stop time section is going to be. I think if it happens at all, if I'm there on the major, it's happening so fast and I'm muting the note that it doesn't become a clash with the chord. I think it's probably, even though it's listed on the page as a half-step bend, I think it's probably more like the ambiguous third, which we talk about in the B.B. King lesson. So, and then measure 22, you stay here and you go 8, full step bend, back to, and then this is a Freddie King move. I mentioned lesson, video 1, Eric loves Freddie King. This is like Clapton took me to Freddie King. This is Clapton filtering Freddie King. So full step, then half step, then 5 now 2nd string, 7 3rd string, and then 5 and 5 together. Bend through to the half step, then 7 on the 4th string. Listen to Freddie King's playing and phrasing on I'm Tore Down. Later on, Eric recorded Tore Down, but Freddie King is the guy. So listen to Freddie King play Tore Down. You'll hear him do stuff like that. And then I'm going back into quintessential kind of Clapton phrases. So I'm going. So just as B.B. King likes to do that kind of stuff, Eric will do the idea of the step and a half bend between the 5th and the dominant 7th, but he'll phrase it differently. And it's all, again, he's a king of the phrasing. So what I'm doing is 5th fret, 2nd string, bend it up, step and a half, which would be to the pitch of the 8th fret, release it, and then back to 3rd fret, 2nd string, back to 5th fret, and then 3, hammer on to 5, pull off to 3. And it's got to go somewhere from there. So it's going to go through the 5th fret on the 3rd string, back to 2nd string, 3rd fret, then 5th fret, bend back to 2 on the 3rd string, back to 5 on the 4th string, back to 2 on the 3rd string. So you put it together. And I know that vibrato is a little narrower than the Clapton vibrato that I love and cherish. But also, it's just Eric's touch. And I try to, at the right, it's knowing when to dig into the string. If you dig into the string all the time, it just gets exhausting. He's got a perfect touch on the guitar. So, and he's got a perfect range of touches. It's not just having one touch and that's my touch. Even like in the B.B. King lesson, and it's something I didn't mention there or touch on there because it's just so global, and I hope a lot of this is becoming intuitive by now for you, but dynamics are a big deal when you're playing guitar and when you're improvising things. So there's a lot of range just in your touch. Are you going to whisper, or are you going to shout? Or are you going to talk in the middle? Playing the guitar is just like having a conversation. That's going back to like advice B.B. King would have given you. It's like having a conversation. It's like telling the truth. If you tell the truth, you don't have to worry about who you lied to. So touch, very important, same thing. And Eric's touch is great. So I'm kind of shouting there. I'm digging in more. And then I'm going now, backside of measure 24, 2 on the 3rd string, up through 5, and then 7, bend it, through 5 on the 2nd string now. And this phrase is in motion. It just has to keep going. This is where in measure 25 the chords go to E7. And I'm going to keep kind of blasting over it. And then I'm going to take a slight pause. Eric will do things like that, and then I'll take a pause. So, but getting up to the pause, it's... Then 8, this is now measure 25, 8 with a quarter step bend on the 2nd string. Then 5 on the 2nd string, or 5 on the 1st string. 7, did I say 2nd string? 8 on the 2nd string, 5 on the 1st string, 7 on the 1st string, and then it's 5, hammer on 7, pull off to 5, 8, 2nd string, 5, 1st string, 8, 2nd string, 5, 2nd string, and I'm putting vibrato on there. And then 5, 8 again, 5, now high E string. So the measure 25 becomes... And then you go 26, 8, full step bend. This is where the chords go to D7. So it's full step, half step, or ambiguous 3rd, really. Because I'm not doing that. I just know in my heart I'm not. I wouldn't do that over a D7, but I do an ambiguous kind of 3rd where it's maybe in between. It's maybe like, it's sharp of the C natural, flat of the C sharp. So I guess more like a quarter step bend, but or if it sounds in the moment, you can listen to the jam track, see what you think. Did I do a half step there or a quarter step? That might help, for your own ear training, but this is a case in point on video. We can overthink this really fast. It doesn't matter. If it sounds good, it'll work. If it doesn't, you're training your ear as you learn all this stuff on the guitar. And if it doesn't sound good, you're going to react in a nanosecond and adjust. If I was going through that and it didn't sound good, I would recover without anybody knowing that I didn't mean to do that. I would recover by keep going. I would just keep going up to the next note, which is a good note. So I go back there, so full step, then slight bend, then 5 on the E string, 5 2nd string, 7 3rd string, 5 and 5, half step bend again, half step on the second string, or a half step on the third string, then 7 on the fourth string. Okay, so that's our pausing point. So up to that, we have starting at measure 23. And then I slide down, and then I wind up back here at 15 on the second string, and it's a full step bend, and a release and a pull off to 13, and then a 14th fret on the third string. And then followed by 13 hammer onto 15 on the second string, and then 13 vibrato it on the second. I'm being a little vicious with my touch there, bringing out, raking through those other strings. Getting some of those overtones. I don't know that I did that on the jam along, but. And then that's 28, measure 28, and then you go back to 10 on the second string, 12 third string, 13 second string, 10 second string. And then we're going to go into the last bridge over the D7 chord, which is the third bit of the solo. We're going to start it out on beat 4, going 11, 12, 11, third string, 10, second, 12. And that's going to lead me over into the D7 chord. And we'll talk about that in the third and final solo. But this bit, from measure 13 up through there, up through 28, slowly it's going to be... And that's where the double bar line happens. And case in point, I'll give you the exact measure number. Measure 23, when I was playing that slowly, I was a little flat on the top of that bend. And I point that out because sort of just to lead by example for you, you always want to be aware of your pitch. And you want to work on it also. One of the ways that I work on pitch, and it's a good way whether you're practicing string bending or even like we'll talk about it in the slide guitar video, is I practice with one-pitch drones. There's a lot of ones, you can just dial them up on YouTube, but I'll practice like if something is in the key of A. For like half an hour, that going on, and you're just like internalizing pitch. I do, like I said, that's the way I practice slide guitar. But a lot of times, like when you're slowing something down, that's where we get prone to, you hear the pitch more, and it doesn't turn out to be a big deal. When you're playing at tempo, a lot of times, what might make you go flat would be trying to hold the tension of a string too long. For example, when you're playing something very slowly. But as you form good habits and you internalize pitch, what's going to happen is that you no longer really practice things slowly because you don't need to, but you intuitively start doing stuff at tempo, and it winds up being in tune. So not to be too esoteric about it, but that's an important thing. You got to be aware. Half of it, of getting good at guitar, is like, I heard somebody say once, and interpret it as you will, but I think it's good advice. What you play is not nearly as important as what you're aware of. It's not what you know, it's what you're aware of. If you're aware always of the pitch, you're going to get better. You're going to keep getting better and better and better. But you got to be aware of it, and you got to know when there's something you really need to work on. You need to go, whoa, I keep messing that up over and over, and it's not happening. Put the brakes on. stop for the day or whatever and go, okay, this is now like my new mission. And I don't care if it takes like 6 months. I'm going to like sit in a room and focus on this, and I'm going to internalize my pitch, and I'm going to practice with no vibrato, make sure I'm perfectly in tune. You know, and that can sound really scary and academic and boring. You got to stay inspired, but one of the ways you'll stay inspired is by feeling personal progress with the guitar and knowing that you're getting a little better every day. And so, you know, you'll feel it as you get better, but that's a bit of life advice about the guitar. Having said that, now I'm going to go ahead and play this to the click, and this will be at 116 BPM. Again, I'll start in measure 13. And here it is to the click. 1, 2, 3, 4. In this video, we'll take a look at the last bit of the solo, and it's over the D7 bridge following form 4 in the blues forms lesson. We're just playing a solo in the style of Eric over that. So we're picking up into it from the backside of measure 28, which we talk about at the very end of lesson 2. So 11, 10, 12, and now we start at the double bar line, measure 29, half step bend, 12th fret second string, and it's a pre-bend. Then we release 12, 10, 12, 11 second string, 10 second string. So it's triplets. Triple at 2 and 3. Triple at 2 and 3. And then beat 4, we go 12 again, half step bend on the second. That leads you into measure 30. We're going to go over here to the 14th fret on the 3rd string. I use it because it's got less tension. I'm going to use a step and a half bend. I just want that string to sound really fat and warm and as close as I can get, which I cannot get at all on a Strat with single coils, but listen to Eric and with Cream and listen to the classic woman tone. So you can get closer depending on your touch. I'm using the rounded side of the pick, and you know, but woman tone really necessitates, you know, some classic PAF humbucking pickups through a Marshall with a closed back cabinet. So you know. As much as I dearly love him, it was a little disappointing when, you know, they did the Cream reunion at the Royal Albert Hall, and Eric comes out and he's playing a Strat. You know, now we tend to protect and shield from criticism a lot of times those we love. In the Tone Quest report, some years ago, another guitar player was talking about that and how disappointing. He's like, man, he came out, you know, that wasn't woman tone, that was bitchy ex-wife tone. I don't know. But you can get, you know, a warm sound depending on how you're approaching it with the touch and the right hand techniques, and that's all in the right hand techniques lesson. So functionally, I'm just going and getting the step and a half bend 3 times, then 4, then 5. You can make sense of this rhythmically on the page till you're blue in the face, but you got to be able to feel it. It's out of the triplets. I'm not counting it at all. I'm not going triplet, 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 triplet. I'm just feeling. So it's all in the space of 1 bar. I do that 4 times, and then a 5th time, which leads to a release and a pull off to the 12th fret. Then to 14 on the 4th string. So that leads you up to measure 31. 12, vibrato, then 14 slide down. That's on the third string. So you can put that together, measure 29, 30 into 31. 29, 30 into 31 sounds like. That's what you want. And then you're going to go 14 on the third string to 13 second string, 15 second string, and then 15 full step, then 15, and then 13 full step, 13, 14 vibrato, 13 quarter, and that's going to be. That's maybe like one lick in here as I was, putting the jam along together for you. I wouldn't claim that that's necessarily a verbatim Eric Clapton lick, but, is someone that worked there, so that's what I played. Carlos Santana has a great story, though, speaking about all that stuff, like him being a kid in a room, turning out all the lights, trying to sound exactly like B.B. King, practicing along, and it's like trying over and over and over again to sound like B.B. King, and he comes to this realization, maybe you're not supposed to. It's like we all have our heroes, but we can't really be them, and at some point we have to grow up and find our own voice on the guitar. So having said that, it's not too much cognitive dissonance here that we're trying to take a look at specific guitar styles, because we use that as a springboard to find our own voice on the guitar, and we use it to form good habits and to learn. In a lot of cases, a lot of people an entire generation learned how to play guitar from a lot of these guys. Some stuck with it and got really good, and some tried and moved on to other stuff. But when you have, a player that's iconic, that inspires an entire generation, which I think is tragically hard to find nowadays. We have a few folks that are, folks look up to as guitar heroes. I don't know who's making an entire generation want to play guitar anymore. So that's a separate subject, but and not to be a bit of a downer. But we have our heroes, and then we have to, use it to figure out what we're going to do with it all. So I didn't play a verbatim Clapton lick there. That's the long version, but measure 31 into 32 I just did. I did that, and then I'm into measure 32 into 33, backside of 32. It's 14 third string, 13 second string, and then it's 15 second string, then 15 bend full, back to 15, then 13, then 14 on the third string, back to second string at 15, 13 vibrato, and then 15. So that phrase from the last part of 32 into 33 is. Yeah. That's what it is. So check that out. What's this interval? It's a fourth. So we've been looking at that throughout this whole solo. And that's really sloppy what I just played there, but it's out of context. Same thing. You could be here. But by that point in the guitar, I don't necessarily like the sound of that range of the fingerboard. I like it here better on the second and third strings. So, fourths, they will accomplish good things if you're trying to bring up, the impression of Eric Clapton kind of deal. So, and then measure 34, we're going to go, I'm doubling again. So I'm starting 17th on the third string with a slight bend, 15 second, then 17, then 15, 17, 15, hammer on pull-off. Then 17, then 15 vibrato, 17. So, and then measure 35, it's 17 to 20, high E, 17. So it's those three notes, it's triplets. Then again, and triplet, triplet, same thing, triplet. So, So, okay, so that's leading into measure 36. Let's recap. Measure 31 through 35 will be. Let's see. That's what I want. So. And then, measure 36, we go 15 on the B string with the third finger, slide into the 17th fret. Then 15 high E string, and you just alternate between those two strings as triplets. And then the last triplet, 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 and then you go 17, slide down to 5, pull off to 13, through 14 on the third string. And we shake both strings as we're doing it. We'll put vibrato on there. So that leads you into the turnaround. A, F sharp 7, B7, E7, and I'm just going to play this over it. So a lot of Clapton phrasings in there over the turnaround. It's going to start measure 37, 13, and it's a half-step bend. Let's get into it from leading up to it, give you some context. So from measure 34. So first finger, then 15, then full step, and it's a pre-bend, then 15 unbend, 13 quarter, then 14, third string slide down, and then 11 on the third string, then 10, 12 half step bend, 12 unbend, 10, back to 12, 11 third string, 10 second string, 13 second string, then the hammer on pull off, 10, 13, 10, 13, 10. It's that. It's that lick that we talked about. Then to 11, third string. So now just measure 38 is. And then we go into measure 39, 10 with vibrato, 11, third string, 10, 13 now, and I go a two-step bend. It's a, again, Albert would have done things like that. So two steps, bend up, release, and then when you get back, it's a slight quarter step. That's really the pitch. If you don't quite make it and you just go through here, you're okay because that's a blues scale note. But you want to really get up there. So you release, and then 10, 13, 10 again, the hammer on pull-off. And then the 11 on the third string, 10 second string now, that's measure 40. 11 third string again, and then 12 half step bend, 12 unbend, 10 hammer on to 12, pull off the 10. Then to 11 again on the third string, and then 12 half step, bend, release. Then 10 vibrato. And that's the beginning of the next cycle, and I end with 12 on the second string, full step, bend up. So that's a lot of information quickly, and it's mechanics, it's numbers on the fingerboard, but you got to make music out of all this. So I'll play it for you from measure 34. So just that, because it's got a lot of notes, I'll just play that bit slower, starting in measure 34. So now I'm going to go ahead and play the whole solo. Not the entire jam along, but this bit of the solo from measure 29 to the end, slower. And remember, at that point, the track's going to loop. It's going to go the entire cycle through again. So in one swift move, you can practice along either all of this, some of this, take a lick, one lick that you like, and make up the rest of your own, however you want to use the tracks. But measures 29 through the end of what I played is like this. I played something different in the moment because again, it's slowing it down. You don't always feel it the exact same way where the groove is. So one more time, it's going to be like a... And really, once you speed it up to the jam trap tempo, it's going to be like this with the click. Here we are to the click. 1, 2, 3.